Look at the bitch.
I couldn't believe it.
Not afraid at all.
The first shot, look at him. That's forever, Yuki.
Yes.
He actually scored 29 points. Get this, the 5'8" player from Japan.
Remember that kid in high school who was always told he was too short to play? Yuki Kawamura was that kid. But instead of giving up, he went on to become Japan's MVP, lead his national team in the Olympics, and sign with the Memphis Grizzlies. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great! Thank you so much.
With regards to Yuki, now Yuki played 3 years in Japan in one of the Japanese professional leagues, and I bring him up simply to say height sometimes just doesn't matter.
Now, back to the video. Today we're going to show you exactly how this 5'8" guard is changing the game. From his high school championships to dropping dimes in the NBA preseason, this story is about to make you believe in the impossible. Picture this. It's 2018 in Japan, and Yuki Kawamura is getting rejected left and right. Every major high school program is telling him the same thing. You're just too small. At 5'8", they said he'd never make it in professional basketball.
Yuki Kawamura might be my favorite Grizzly of all time.
Yeah, give him a roster spot.
Begin to understand when you watch Yuki play is he's actually a very good playmaker.
But Yuki, he took those rejections and turned them into fuel. He ended up at Fukuoka Daiichi High School, a small program that barely made headlines. But that's where the magic started happening. In those tiny gyms, with barely anyone watching, Yuki was developing something special. His handles were getting tighter, his vision sharper. He wasn't just playing, he was crafting his own style. You should have seen him in those early tournament games. While other players were trying to overpower defenders, Yuki was sliding through them like water. He'd hit them with these lightning-quick crossovers, then zip no-look passes that had everyone in the gym confused. His teammates didn't even see these passes coming at first. They'd just find the ball somehow in their hands under the basket. By his senior year, people couldn't ignore him anymore. Fukuoka Daiichi went from being nobodies to back-to-back championship contenders. Yuki was dropping 30-point games like they were nothing, but it wasn't just about scoring. He was making everyone around him better. His teammates started playing with this new confidence because they knew if they got open, Yuki would find them. The youth circuit started buzzing about this undersized guard who was embarrassing defenders twice his size.
Look at the bitch.
I couldn't believe it.
Not afraid at all.
The first shot, look at him. That's forever, Yuki.
Yes.
He actually scored 29 points. Get this, the 5'8" player from Japan.
Coaches who'd rejected him were now showing up to games, watching this kid they'd written off turn into something special. In the championship game of his senior year, Yuki put up 35 points and 12 assists. The crowd wasn't even surprised anymore. They expected it. That's how a 5'8" player nobody wanted became the new face of Japanese basketball. He didn't just prove the doubters wrong, he changed their whole perspective on what a basketball player could be. In those high school gyms, Yuki wasn't just winning games. He was showing every undersized kid in Japan that height doesn't measure heart. But dominating high school was just the beginning. Because what Yuki did next, that's when things got really interesting. We're talking about the moment he stepped onto the world stage, where those same moves he developed in high school were about to shock some of the biggest names in basketball.
Yuki Kawamura has made the Memphis Grizzlies. A little earlier in the day, he averaged 20 points and 8 assists per game.
Down by 18 points against Finland in the World Cup, Japan looked finished. Their 5'8" guard was facing a wall of defenders nearly 2 feet taller than him. The crazy part? That's exactly when Yuki Kawamura decided to put on the performance of his life. Picture the scene. Finland's defense, anchored by NBA star Lauri Markkanen, towering over Yuki like skyscrapers. The Finnish players were practically laughing, thinking this tiny guard would stay on the perimeter and chuck up desperate threes. But Yuki had other plans. With 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, something clicked. Yuki started attacking those giants head-on. He'd hit them with this nasty hesitation move, get them leaning one way, then explode past them before they could even react. The Finnish players couldn't believe what was happening. This 5'8" guard was getting to the rim at will. The crowd went from silent to electric. Every time Yuki drove into the paint, you could hear the collective gasp. He wasn't just scoring, he was putting on a show.
To Jalen Wells.
See, now you could just tell he got a great feel for, oh my God, he got a great feel for the game.
Crazy. The short kings, bro. Y'all doing it for us.
Yeah, for
Put
sure.
respect on Yuki. Because, bro, he is legitimately like, if you post a Yuki highlight now,
Between his acrobatic layups and no-look passes, he turned what looked like a blowout into a game that had everyone on their feet. In that fourth quarter alone, Yuki dropped 17 of his 25 points. But it wasn't just about the scoring. He was threading passes through impossible angles, finding cutters that nobody else could see. Even when Markkanen would switch onto him, Yuki didn't back down. He'd use that quickness advantage, get Markkanen moving his feet, then either blow by him or create space for his teammates. The international basketball community lost their minds. Here was this undersized guard from Japan, fearlessly attacking some of Europe's best defenders. Social media exploded with clips of Yuki's moves, comparing him to Allen Iverson and other legendary small guards. Nobody saw this coming, except maybe Yuki himself. But you know what's even crazier? That Finland game was just the warm-up. Because next up on Yuki's World Cup hit list? None other than Luka Dončić and the Slovenian national team. And if you thought Yuki was done shocking the world, you better think again. While other small guards live and die by the three-point shot, Yuki does something that makes absolutely no sense. He attacks the rim harder than players a foot taller than him.
Why is it?
don't do him like that.
Oh!
That's what we could call him.
Japanese J.
The
Will.
Japanese J. Will.
I like that. Stamp that.
That's where his special move comes in. A technique so deadly it's being compared to Allen Iverson's arsenal. Watch Yuki when he's got the ball at the top of the key. He's not looking to pull up from deep like most guards his size. Instead, he's scanning, waiting for that perfect moment when the defense gets just a little too comfortable. That's when he unleashes what Japanese fans are calling the ghost dribble, a lightning-quick hesitation move that makes defenders freeze in their tracks. Here's how it works. Yuki starts with a gentle rocking motion, almost like he's about to settle for a jumper. Just when the defender starts to relax, he drops his shoulders slightly and takes one hard dribble. But that's the trick. It's not the actual attack. Before the defender can react, Yuki's already switched directions, exploding past them with a burst of speed that seems impossible for someone his size. The craziest part? The move works even better against 7-footers. Those big guys are used to smaller players trying to shoot over them or dart around their sides. But Yuki? He goes right at them, using their height against them. By the time they realize what's happening, he's already at the rim, laying it in with either hand. You can see shades of Allen Iverson in the way he attacks. That same fearless mentality, the quick crossovers, the ability to finish through contact. But Yuki's added his own twist. Where Iverson would often pull up for that mid-range jumper, Yuki keeps going, using his low center of gravity to get all the way to the cup. His training routine is just as unorthodox as his playing style.
You play in the league. How cold do you have to be 5? Be generous. He's not 5'9". 5'7" and play on an NBA court with like.
But when he
get to the rim,
he getting the assist.
While other guards are working on their three-point shot, Yuki's in the gym practicing against chairs stacked on top of each other to simulate 7-foot defenders. He's developed this uncanny ability to find angles that taller players can't defend, spaces that only someone his size could exploit. All these moves, all this training, it's been building to something bigger. Because what Yuki did in high school and what he showed in the World Cup, that was just the preview. The real test was coming up. Could these same moves work against the best defenders in the world? The Memphis Grizzlies were about to find out, and what happened next would shock everyone, including Yuki himself. Everyone in Memphis expected Yuki's size to be his biggest weakness. Instead, it became his superpower. In just one preseason game, he pulled off something that hadn't been seen in the NBA since Steve Nash, and the numbers prove it. The Memphis crowd didn't know what to expect when Yuki stepped onto the court for his first preseason game. Most fans probably thought he was a ball boy who wandered too far, but the moment he got the ball in his hands, the whole arena went silent. That signature hesitation move that worked in Japan, it was working even better against NBA talent. Yuki wasn't just holding his own, he was controlling the entire pace of the game. In just 18 minutes of play, he dished out 8 assists, each one more impressive than the last. He was finding cutters that nobody else could see, threading passes through impossible windows. The Grizzlies bench was going crazy, jumping up after every play like they couldn't believe what they were watching. But it wasn't just the flashy passes that caught everyone's attention.
That's Huff right there, right?
That's all. Yeah, that's gonna be Jaren, bro.
The Yuki and Huff connection.
Because it goes crazy. Yuki is a. he also Roser.
He had the man.
He doing the Santi thing. We used to talk about Santi being the Heem guy.
Yuki was getting to the rim against NBA level defenders, using that same quick strike attack he perfected in the World Cup. He had this way of making 7-footers look like they were moving in slow motion. Every time he drove to the basket, you could hear the crowd holding their breath, then erupting when he somehow found a way to finish. The Grizzlies coaching staff had seen enough. Right after that game, they pulled Yuki aside and offered him something he'd dreamed about since those days in Japanese high school: a 2-way NBA contract. They saw what everyone else was starting to see. This wasn't just some undersized guard trying to make it. This was a player who could change games with his vision and fearlessness. Now everyone's talking about Yuki's potential impact on the NBA. Some are comparing his court vision to Chris Paul's early years, while others see shades of Tony Parker in the way he navigates the paint. But Yuki's not trying to be the next anybody. He's creating his own legacy. The craziest part? This is just the beginning. Every time people try to put a ceiling on what Yuki can do, he smashes right through it. From rejected high school prospect to World Cup sensation to NBA player. He's proving that basketball isn't about how tall you stand, but how big you play. And speaking of playing big, wait until you hear about the mission that's driving him to change basketball forever. Here's something wild. Yuki's not just changing the game, he's changing how kids see themselves. Every time he steps on that court, there are thousands of undersized players in Japan and around the world watching, thinking, if he can do it, why can't I? Before Yuki, Japanese basketball was mostly off the global radar. Now, scouts are taking regular trips to Japan looking for the next hidden gem. They're not just measuring height anymore, they're looking for that special something Yuki showed them. Just last week, Yuki pulled off this crazy move that sums up his whole story. Caught between 2 7-footers in the paint, most players would have passed out. But Yuki? He went right through them, spun in the air, and finished with his left hand. The crowd went absolutely nuts. That's Yuki Kawamura for you, proving that heart beats height every single time.